After facing challenges and tragedies that most people wouldn't be able to endure and going through a near-death experience, Rob Gentel discovered a curious divine connection that runs through everything and every living being on Earth. Surrounded by light, he revisited his life, confronted guilt, and found forgiveness in a realm higher than our own. And there, a powerful and loving interconnection was revealed to him, showing that life has meaning even for those going through the darkest moments of their lives. Hello, I'm Marcus, and it's a pleasure to have you here at Beyond the Life We Live. I hope you feel at home and absorb the lesson from the story we're about to share. By the way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it's very important to us and helps bring more impactful stories to you. Rob Gentel grew up in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, immersed in the life of a steel town. His childhood was marked by the early loss of his father in a plant accident, which left a deep void. Before that tragedy, the family lived modestly in a small house, where Rob shared a room with his brothers and slept in a crib next to his parents. But one night changed his perspective forever when a sphere of light descended from the ceiling, seeming to transmit a special kind of energy. That experience became an emotional anchor that stayed with him throughout his life. After his father's death, Rob went through intense emotional struggles, lost in search of his path, and even as a teenager, he remained deeply intrigued by the meaning of that light from his childhood, connecting it to questions about God, existence, and purpose. Later on, he married Melanie, and together they had a daughter, Maria. But at 18 months old, they discovered that Maria had Rett syndrome, a rare neurological condition that affects brain development, leading to challenges such as severe autism, cerebral palsy, and motor limitations. Maria, now 26, still needs assistance with her daily activities. Rob and his wife, Melanie, have devoted their lives to searching for a cure, relentlessly to this day. Although Maria's seizures are now under control, they spent years living with a disturbing seizure disorder. For months, Rob and Melanie lived in the hospital, watching Maria go through intense seizures that could only be stopped with intravenous treatments, inducing a coma. Rob's life took an unexpected turn at age 56 when he began experiencing neck pain due to old sports injuries. Tests revealed bone spurs, a type of abnormal bone growth, especially in the joints, which required surgery done by a doctor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Despite the procedure seeming simple, 3 nights after the surgery, Rob suffered a blood clot in a main artery, which led to a severe heart attack. His wife recognized something was wrong, called emergency services, and Rob was rushed to the hospital. On the way, the ambulance driver identified the heart attack, and once in the ER, a nurse began administering anticoagulants and tried to calm him down. By then, he was unconscious. What followed was astonishing. In a moment his wife later described as something out of a movie, Rob sat up on the gurney and shouted the name Frost, then collapsed again. A code blue echoed through the hospital, alerting the medical team, who rushed to handle the critical situation. Before being taken out of the room, Rob's wife begged the doctor to save her husband, explaining that they had a daughter with special needs and that she couldn't go through this alone. After 20 minutes of non-stop effort, with Rob clinically dead, the doctor managed to find a very weak pulse. But things were still critical, and Rob was intubated and placed in a coma for 4 long days. While neurologists assessed his condition and his wife prayed for a miracle, his older brother traveled from Pittsburgh and called the local parish priest. The priest performed the Catholic last rites in preparation for his meeting with God. On the 4th day, the doctors told Rob's wife they couldn't wait any longer, and it was time to remove the tubes. They believed that even if he survived, he would most likely be in a vegetative state. But as they began removing the tubes, Rob started choking and, surprisingly, regained consciousness. As he came out of recovery, the first person he saw was his wife, Melanie. In a high-pitched, almost childlike voice, he repeated,
Melon, you have to believe.
He revealed that Frosty, his brother-in-law, who had passed away just weeks earlier, had appeared during the critical moment. He said Frosty told him,
I caused a lot of confusion. You have to go back and help clear things up, but tell my family I'm okay.
That revelation made total sense to Melanie. Only Frost would say something like that. He had been going through a rough time, dealing with a divorce and living at his parents' house. Sadly, just weeks before Rob's critical night, Frost had taken his own life. Frost's mother had asked Rob to look for a journal or some explanation in his room. After 7 painful searches, Rob found a journal and gave it to the family. And to this day, he wonders if Frost's appearance was some kind of preparation for what was coming. That experience caused a major shift in his perception of religious beliefs, rooted in Catholic faith, where taking one's life is seen as a mortal sin. Frost's visit brought a completely new paradigm. On the second day after coming out of the coma, Rob, still with paralyzed arms, was approached by the doctor who had saved him. She shared details about the efforts to save his life that night until, in a more personal moment, she opened up about her own father, who had died suddenly of a brain aneurysm 6 months before her first child was born. She admitted that since her father's death, she had lost part of her spirituality and had grown bitter. Rob's miraculous survival made her question if maybe there was something greater out there, because statistically, he shouldn't be alive. That was when everything clicked for Rob. Besides Frost reaching out to him, another male presence had entered the room while the doctor was treating him. He clearly heard a reassuring voice saying,
Keep working on him. Don't give up. You can save him.
That's when he realized it was the doctor's father speaking through him, encouraging her to keep trying to save his life. Although he didn't have the courage to tell her at the time, it wasn't until a year later, during a chance encounter at the hospital cafe, that he finally shared that revelation with her. After the miracle of survival, Rob began a long rehabilitation journey. Even though his brain had been deprived of oxygen for nearly 20 minutes, he showed no signs of brain damage, something doctors found unbelievable. His arms, however, remained paralyzed, and he had to relearn how to write and perform basic tasks. Determined to recover, he stayed focused on his daughter Maria, using her as constant motivation, and with each step forward, he saw rehab not just as a personal victory, but as a way to ensure he could stay present to care for her. Over the following months, Rob thought deeply about his near-death experience, remembering being embraced by a loving, comforting presence. He said it felt like there was a sense of unity among all living things, as if everything was connected by a subtle, intelligent, and conscious energy. He realized that the guilt and regret he carried in life, including family traumas, the absence of his father, and even his own failings as a father and husband, were seen with compassion by that presence, which helped him forgive himself. In that realm, there was no judgment, only total clarity about other people's feelings. He could literally feel, as if they were his own, the emotional impacts his actions had on others throughout his life, both good and bad.
I remember crying out, "Do with me what you will." And in that moment, I found myself standing in the middle of nowhere. It was inexplicable. I thought to myself, how can this be happening? I found myself inside this timeless place, kind of like this vacuum of sorts. And I think the best way to try to explain this, it's kind of like when you're flying on an airplane, you're looking out an airplane window and it's clear blue sky, you could see everything, but you're really seeing nothing. And that's what it was like. And yet it was as if I was connected to the vast wisdom of the universe, all of it without words.
That helped him understand how important every small act of empathy and respect really is. When he came back, he carried with him the certainty that there's a greater purpose guiding our existence, and that even suffering that seems meaningless may be part of something bigger. Rob says the light he saw as a child was the same kind of energy he encountered during his near-death experience, and that it marked both the beginning and the confirmation of something that had always been with him, even in his hardest moments. Today, he dedicates his life to sharing that experience with others, helping those who are dealing with loss, deep pain, or spiritual doubt. He remains by his wife's side, caring for their daughter with love and keeping alive the connection to something he believes is beyond human understanding, but accessible to anyone willing to feel it.